Assalamu alaikum and welcome to The Disturbing Truth. I'm Alexandra Al-Mahdi and I'm joined with Saiha Al-Mahdi, Yasmin Al-Mahdi and Sarah Al-Mahdi.
Assalamu alaikum.
So yesterday's episode we spoke about the topic of the ego, right? So, we spoke about how, the message of every single prophet and messenger throughout time was very consistent. It was to deny the self. And that the inclinations that we have, that our ego tends towards are actually bad for us. And what we need to do is deny those. And the true path to enlightenment basically is to deny our own self and to submit to the Imam of the time, submit to the man who is appointed by God. And this is the way that we can become free from our ego. And today we want to go into this topic in a bit more detail, like the topic basically of the ego versus the soul. And how this topic is impacting us in the current situation that we're living in the world today.
So in order for us to talk about the ego and the soul, we want to touch upon a concept called raja'a in Arabic that comes a lot in the narrations. And this idea of raja'a is the return of the souls to this world. So it actually means reincarnation, as we have spoken about it before in previous episodes. And it's the reincarnation in the time of the Qa'im, but also in the time of others. And what is it? It's this concept of the raja is to carry out this everlasting battle that has been happening between the good and evil. So we have a lot of narrations where Ahl al-Bayt from them is where they're speaking about this concept of the raja, and they talk about it a lot. And it's a time period, right? And if we translate the word raja, which is an Arabic word, we translate it to English, it actually translates to return, the word return, which is reincarnations. You keep returning over and over again. So the soul is the one that returns into this time, in this world. And now, talking about raja, why do we mention this word raja? Because in the narrations, there is a narration from Ahl al-Bayt where they actually say something really important. They say, whoever does not believe in our raja, whoever does not believe in our return is not from us. This is a huge statement. This is a core concept, and we have to believe in it, because if we don't believe in this concept of return, then we don't believe in Ahl al-Bayt, we don't believe in God, really, because this is what the family of Prophet Muhammad, they, peace be upon him, they stated this back in the day. In these narrations, we find this narration, right? So we have to understand that the concept of the return, the concept of reincarnating and coming back over and over again is not something that is strange and forbidden to believe in, but it's actually from God. It's from Ahl al-Bayt. Exactly. They did speak about it.
I think it's like a misinterpretation of what the day of resurrection means.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. That's also like in itself a huge topic to talk about. And this has to do with the concept of reincarnation and returning. And the narrations also state that the souls are in a constant state of returning. It's something that's happening all the time. It's not like only in the time of the resurrection, right? But it's something that's happening over and over again. And we see, for instance, the Quran indicates towards this when it mentions that there was a certain soul living in the time of Prophet Muhammad, but it also lived at the time of Yusuf, Prophet Yusuf, right? So it's there, and we could go into it and talk about it, and there's so much proof that shows that reincarnation is the truth. But right now is the time when the best of the best come back and the worst of the worst come back, and they will have this battle. And so in this final battle, this final struggle to control the planet, this is what it is, right? Really, the evil wants to control the planet, and the good wants to bring goodness to the planet. And we have... you want to say something?
So basically at this time, we have the best of the best returning, and we also have the worst of the worst returning, right?
Right, So before... The best of the worst of the worst, they came. The Pharaoh, they came in a certain time. Nimrod came in another time, and we have Abu Lahab. He came in one time, and Pontius Pilate came in another time. We have the same with the good prophets and messengers. Ezekiel came at one time, Krishna at another time, Buddha at one time, Muhammad at another time. They were all scattered at different times.
Yeah.
But now in this return, and what Abu Sadiq from him his peace likes to call the return of returns, like it's the return, right?
Everyone's back right now.
Yeah, which is right now. Now the Qa'im will come back, and with him will be those 144,000 prophets and messengers. They are referenced in the book of Revelation. They will be back. Those prophets are not now scattered in different times. They're actually together, and Jesus will return. And at the same time, the worst will return, right? And these people will be in different parts of the planet in this time, and they will be able to they have these souls of these holy people and also these evil people. And the holy ones are trying to establish this divine just state that we've been talking about so much. And they're trying to conquer and push back these evil forces, this darkness.
Yeah, so while, the good souls, they've all returned basically in order to support Aba Al-Sadiq from him his peace, in order to build the divine just state, at the same time, Iblis is also gathering all of his soldiers, all of the worst who've returned in this time. And these are the worst of tyrants, evil ones, hypocrites and disbelievers, basically. So everyone that you can think of has returned in this day and age. So this is such a historical time, and it's never going to be repeated. So in the time of the Qa'im, all of the prophets and messengers returned, and all of the evil ones have come back. As you said, we have now Pharaoh, we have Nimrod, Pontius Pilate, Judas Iscariot, Yazid, Muawiyah, Abu Lahab, Abu Sufyan, Abu Jahl. All of these characters have come back basically from all of these different times, as you said.
There's a verse that I'm thinking about where Jesus says, "You're either for me or you're against me." This is the time where you have to choose sides. You can't be in the middle, or you're either with the messenger of God under the banner of God's messenger, just like in the previous times, or you're against him, or you are with Satan and the Nimrod and the Pharaoh and basically Iblis and Satan. So if you don't choose the straight path with the messenger of God, choose monotheism, you are against God.
Yeah. Exactly. So this final battle basically, which has actually been prophesied in all religions, this battle between light and darkness, which is going to come at the end times. The fighting is basically initially it's not physical, basically it's an ideological, theological struggle. And the soldiers of Iblis, we know they're all ruling the earth right now. They're in these positions of power. They're propagating this ideology, which is this me first ideology, this antichrist ideology, which is anti-Muhammad. It's the anti-Mahdi and the anti-God, basically, ideology.
Anti-God.
And this basically anti-God ideology is the supremacy of man, the supremacy of selfishness, the idea that our choice is better than God's choice. This is, the opposite of the message of God, and this is what is ruling the world right now. This is the religion of Iblis. Because Iblis, he fell out of paradise because he rejected the man who God had appointed as the leader. He rejected the supremacy of God. He rejected Adam, who God appointed, and he said, "Verily, I am appointing a caliph on the land." And Satan, he couldn't accept this appointment. And this is the reason he fell. And, it makes sense if people think about it, if people contemplate about it, it makes sense that he wants to prove basically that mankind is no better than him, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, he wants to cause mankind to fall in the same way he fell, which was not by disbelieving in God, it was by rejecting the man who God appointed.
Exactly.
And this is exactly what he's done. And this
that's
is
the key word. He
Exactly.
didn't disbelieve in God.
This is the state of the world that we live in today, where humanity has followed in the footsteps of Iblis. They have rejected the Adam of the time. They have rejected the man that God has appointed. And this is why we see all of this darkness and all of this, satanic system.
It's so scary when you think about it. Really, you're saying to believe in the religion of Iblis is not to say I'm a Satanist. It's actually to just not believe in the one appointed by God.
And you could see yourself as an extremely holy person who prays so much and worships God. If that's what, but you're not truly worshipping God in the way that He wants to be worshipped. Satan, he says to God when he rejects Adam, I'll worship you through a tree. I'll worship you through the moon. And he suggests all these other ways of worshipping God. But God says, no, I don't need your worship. Like, I want to be worshipped in the way I am telling you to be, like, to worship me. So for sure, it's very scary because people, they have been very confused about this reality, and lots of them are following in the footsteps of Iblis without even realizing that they've done that.
This is what the call is for. You know, it's for those people who believe in God, who want to obey Him, who believe in the messengers, who believe in the books, who believe in the last day. You know, those people who are true believers, who are unknowingly following Iblis, you know, out of manipulation and deceit. So now this is why we are here, and this is why Aba Al-Sadiq from Him His Peace is here. First of all, you know, to call. You know, to call to those believers and to call the people to God and to His messenger to be under the banner of allegiances to God.
Exactly. So this is why, you know, all of these returned righteous people have returned now. In order to propagate this, the true religion of God, which is the supremacy of God, that God appoints the leader, and that, you know, in order to be on the truth, we have to be following the leader who is appointed by God.
Yeah.
And, you know, mankind, we have no right to choose our own leaders.
Yeah. That's really well said. Thank you. Yeah, so you know, there's this verse in the Quran, you know, everybody knows this, where, you know, where basically Iblis, he said, I'm not going to prostrate, I'm not going to obey Adam, I'm better than him, I can do a better job ruling the world. So then there's a conversation that happens between him and God, and he says, you know, when God tells him that He's going to punish him, He says, please give me respite. Give me respite until the rise, until they return. You know, but He says, okay, you are among those who are respited until the appointed day. And this is that appointed day. This is the time that's never going to happen again in history. This is the time, you know, previously, you know, in the time of Jesus, for example, we had Elijah coming back as John the Baptist. We had, in the time of Imam Al-Sadiq, peace be upon him, you know, some of his companions like Jonah and Gabriel, they've come back, you know, to support him in his mission. But this is the time where all of them are going to come. All of them, it's basically like a karmic reset. So basically, all of the messengers, all of the prophets, all of the righteous people, martyrs, they're basically here to exact revenge for all of the oppression and the murder that they have experienced. And this is the big day that's spoken of in the Quran, where Iblis is going to be killed. He's going to be destroyed. So this is the time that all of the prophets and all of the messengers, they've been looking forward to it. And this is that appointed day, the appointed time where this is going to happen.
Fascinating. Like, I was just thinking that the thing that really actually disturbed me about the return was that, yes, we know that the righteous souls return and these tyrants return. The narration stated that in the time of the Qa'im, all these prophets and messengers, as you said, they'll return. But it's like there's like 8 billion in the people. So I would actually wonder to myself, you know, like the amount of prophets and messengers that are documented, and even the unknown ones. Let's just say the Book of Revelation states 144,000, right? So now let's say 144,000 righteous souls, they return. They enter the bodies. That's 144,000 bodies out of like 8 billion.
Yeah.
So what's with the rest of the, the population?
It's 144,000 souls even, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So we have those 144,000 righteous. So I'm talking about their souls. There are other souls. I'm going to get into it. But I'm talking about if we just like sit back and think about that part, which is just like 144,000 actual righteous souls, these ones who've done something and called towards the supremacy of God, or who have supported the supremacy of God throughout history. For over 10,000 years, since the time of Adam, we have 144,000 souls who have called towards that. And that's very unfortunate. That it's very sad. It goes to show how much Iblis actually has control over this
world.
Exactly, this world.
I mean, this was also a promise, you know, to Iblis whenever he asked God to give him more sons, you know, twice as many children as
and it goes back to the verse that you just mentioned from the Holy Quran, that it gave me respite until the day of their return. And that is that 10,000 years of all this chaos and oppression and injustice and all these tyrannical souls that returned over and over again. And only now will the 144,000 gather at one point. So they've been gathering, of course, scattered throughout time. But right now it'd be as that, they need like a huge concentration of this light for you to dispel this really dark world. So it makes sense that it's needed with the Mahdi.
Yeah.
So back to what disturbed me was that when Abu Sadiq revealed to us, from him his peace, when he revealed to us that there are actually vessels on this earth right now as we speak who don't actually have a soul.
Yeah, and actually like a lot.
A lot. That's why, again, let's say 144,000 righteous ones.
There's so many less souls than there are bodies. Right?
There's so many bodies on this earth, and some of them don't have souls, and that was very like it's a hard reality to actually swallow if you think about it, because it could have been anyone if you weren't. And this is why the prophets really like. There's a sense of urgency in defeating the self, and controlling yourself and submitting to the Caliph of God in your time. It's for your own sake, and you're doing goodness to no one except for your own soul and your own self. So what happens? So the soul, I was like explained it in a way, and he's explained it in much more detail than any justice I'm going to give it right now in his book and his videos. But he said that the souls, the righteous souls, let's start with the righteous souls, they actually get a choice of vessel. And that's very fascinating if you think about it. So you have these souls, right? So your soul, it can actually, it's up there, and it has a choice, like from a group of vessels. It's not like it doesn't have the choice of like 8 billion. It has the choice of a selected amount of vessels that are in its close to its likeness, or what it sees as its that's close to what it sees as itself to be. So, and the soul actually knows so much. It's a being that is like out of this world, so it knows so much about the body. It knows so much in a sense that it knows like the family it's in. Like it knows its location, and it knows other minor details regarding it. So it knows the way its life would play out. So in certain ways, because there's many ways in how life plays out, so it can fulfill its mission.
Exactly. Yeah.
So of course, it from this certain range of choices, which is based on the karma, by the way.
Yeah. So basically, like you said before in another episode as well, that like karma is like almost like a currency. So if someone has really good karma, they can buy like a better vessel.
Exactly.
Incarnate.
So so if your currency, your good karma is high, and you have a lot of good currency, you have a very like you got a good selection of vehicles, let's say.
Yeah.
So, and it will choose something that's closest to the best nafs, like the self, the nafs meaning the self, that can carry it for a mission, right? So then it will choose that. So what about like evil souls? Like now, let's say I gave the example of a evil soul who has the lust for fornication. Let's say like a soul that's all it wants to do. So naturally, it wouldn't choose a vessel like a body of a nun, or it wouldn't choose the vessel of a chaste person, or someone who has a good self, in a sense that it wouldn't, its surroundings and its environment and its lifestyle wouldn't play out roles where it can be always like in having opportunities where it's always like committing such activities. Yeah. So naturally, this specific soul that lusts for fornication would enter a body that has a lifestyle that would aid that lust for itself.
Yeah. So basically, like the good souls and the evil souls, they find a body that's best suited to it.
In simple terms, exactly what you just said. It's just like whatever that soul wants to do on earth, it will find that body that is like the best body for that soul to carry out what it wants. It's like what its need is or its intention is.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, so
it's really fascinating.
This idea that you're explaining now, it's really so complex, and
it is
complex. And there we have to look at certain terms, right, and see what the differences are between these terms. So we have the term body, we have the term self, and we have the term soul. Okay, what are we? Like, are all of these the same thing? Are they separate stuff? So if we look at it, and Abu Sadiq from his piece, he explained it, and he said, if we look at when you say me or I, and you're talking about yourself, and you're talking about you, right? You're actually describing the union of those three. So it's the body, the self, and the soul. And the body, what would that be? That would be something this vehicle that you were talking about, what is born, what's living, and it's dying and it rots, you know, and this cannot be our true identity, right? Because
it's temporary.
It's just a vehicle that like if life goes out of it, it just doesn't function anymore.
Yeah.
Just like a car, when there's it's not on, there's no gas in it, there's no driver, there's nothing, it's not functioning. When the keys are out, then the car is just a vehicle.
Yes, exactly.
So that's what the body is. As for the self, which we also call nafs, or we sometimes call it ego, or the I, you know, or the ana in Arabic, which means ego. This is what people refers to as their identity, but it's actually the false identity. It's not really their identity. It's not them. Because what is this ego? It's a cluster of emotions in the chest. Okay, it exists here in the chest region. This is how Allah from His peace explains it. Yeah, and it's based upon your life and what you've gone throughout your life. So the feedback you get, and for instance, the experiences you've had with humans and other experiences that you've had with different things, interactions, programs, what you see in life, what you're taught in life, right?
Yeah.
And it creates this illusionary character. So if you would have lived in one place, your character would be in a certain way, but if you change environment and you live in another place, your personality changes too. So this is something that also is changeable. It's not fixed.
And it's based like right, like on the way people have responded to us. So like, for example, if someone had been like rejected a lot for their whole life, they're much more likely to have this emotional self in their chest, which is kind of perceives rejection and or feels strong emotions about it. And exactly, whereas if someone's had a lot of positive feedback throughout their life, they're more likely to have a self that's very confident. So it's really just this like false character that's based on our past experiences, and it's all, you know, all of these emotions that we feel is a complete illusion. Basically.
Exactly, and it's what we create in our heads and hearts, right? So, like for instance, when you watch a movie and you see something and you like what they say and you learn their ways of speaking, and then you start speaking that way, or liking their same sense of humor, and it's not a part of them; it became a part of them. They created that, and the movie left an imprint on them, you know. And so the self is this collective result of these emotions that you experience when you watch the movie, when you were called ugly or whatever, you know, that caused your self-esteem to just get lower, or if you were born in a really rich family and you like certain tastes and certain foods, right?
Yeah, it goes to show how careful you have to be with children.
Exactly, that's such an important thing, and raising children is so important. And as we talk about this cluster of emotions, Abba Salih from his piece, he said something that I would like to quote. He said, all of these emotions that are built and clustered together and have an imprint on them from the experience of the ears and the eyes and the nostrils and the mouth and the hands becomes the self of the human being, or in short, how the human being views that he is, or the illusionary self that he thinks that he is. So this is interesting. He's mentioning these different organs of our body that actually are the ones who feel the senses, are the senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, listening, touching, right? So these 5 senses that we have, they are the ones that are affecting our this nafs, this ego, you know. And Abba Salih from his piece, he makes an allegory with a video game, which he talks about the body. If you look at our body, what is it? This word, the term body. If you have a game and you have a certain avatar there, and it's a body, it's a character that's playing, right? And that becomes the body, just the body that you move around. The ego, this other term that we have, ego, becomes the personality of the character. You see how sometimes when you play a game, the character like starts talking and acting in a certain way that is typical for that character, right, in that game. And then, so that's basically the cluster of emotion that drives the vehicle. So the ego drives the body. So he mentions an example, Abba Salih from his piece mentions an example. How does the emotion drive the vehicle? How does it make it work? He said, for instance, if you're hungry, your emotions will act. How? Well, the emotions doesn't like this feeling of hunger, so it has to go and act. Act how? Go to find food. So your emotions make you go and make an action, which is go find the food.
Yeah.
And then
you're aggressive, so you can hunt and you
hunt.
can get food. Like it's like becomes a competition. So your body, it reacts to that with appropriate adrenaline and emotion. Yeah.
And so then what happens then is you start feeding, like when you take that food, you feed your senses, this hunger, you start feeding it, the taste, you eat it with your senses, so to say, right? And so the ego is created through the 5 senses. And all the negative and positive feedback that comes in will create a bad or a good ego. A good nafs, which is ego, right? And so in this game, if we go back to it, we spoke about a body and we spoke about an ego. But then there's this third part that is the soul. So what is this soul? Which part here in this game is the soul? It becomes the person who is playing the game, right? Yeah. The one who's playing there. The one when you speak outside of the game, the ones inside the game are unable to hear you, right?
Exactly. So the soul, it's it is like a video game, basically. So the soul is like behind the screen, and the soul's mission is to gain control of the vehicle, the body, basically. And in order to do that, it needs to control the personality.
Exactly.
Control the emotions. The souls will have a mission. When they come to Earth, they have to control the body fully in order to complete their mission. The ego, the emotions that are, coming out from these experiences that we've had, or the senses, basically, they are what resists the soul from carrying out its mission, from carrying out its task. So it's like it is this battle, basically. So good or evil souls, regardless of whether they're good or evil, when they enter into the body, the resistance they get from being able to carry out the scenario or life that they want to fulfill, it's coming from the ego, the emotions, the self, which is in a clash with the soul. And, for this reason, the prophets and messengers, they all had this consistent message, which was to deny the self, because the self is at odds with the soul. It's opposing the soul. And, Imam Ali, he said the biggest jihad is against our own self. And, for sure, it is the most important form of struggle is against the self, because, if a person loses a war, like a physical battle, they might die, they might lose their body. Okay, and this is a really disturbing truth. But if a person, they lose the struggle against their self, then they can lose their soul.
Which is an even more disturbing reality.
Yeah. And if you lose your soul, Aba Al-Sadiq from his piece said there's no coming back from that. So this is why it's so important, to overcome the self, to overpower the self. So the souls, they're not from this world. They come down into this world and they seek to possess these bodies like avatars in a video game. And their mission is to control the body. So evil souls, like you said, they will choose evil selves that are already engaged in whatever evil activities they want to fulfill, whatever their soul is leaning towards. So the soul, it chooses a self which is most compatible for it. So the resistance of the self against the soul is minimal. And the same is true with a good self and a good soul. The good soul, it will choose from its karmic karma that it has. It will be able to, like we said, buy choices, in a way, like it will have like a specific choice based on its karma, what body it can go into. So it will choose the one that's most submissive and humble, basically a good soul, that most compatible with the personality of the soul that it's coming into, and will give it the optimal chance of carrying out its mission. And the mission we know of all the good souls today is to support the Qa'im Aba Al-Sadiq from his piece, in order to build God's kingdom on earth. This is the only reason the good souls have returned now, and why they've all returned now.
And it's so interesting to hear this, because then you understand that nothing is a coincidence. You don't just get born, or like nothing that happens in your life is a coincidence. You earn it. The prophets are coming back. The evil ones are coming back, and you are put in these scenarios because that's how it works. That's how it functions, right?
Yeah. So the self and the soul, they struggle against each other, but the person's true identity is the soul. because the body dies and it goes away. So whilst we have this false identity of this ego inside of us, this is like a temporary illusion. And actually when the person dies, it dissipates. It just goes, these emotions that they're just feelings and they just disappear when we die. The only thing that remains sometimes of a good self is sometimes that it, like a good self with a good personality, it kind of can leave an imprint on the soul, right? Yeah. So the soul will kind of have some like remembrance of a good personality from a previous incarnation it had, but the bad self, it just disappears. So all of these negative emotions that we want to fight, they are temporary and they just disappear. And the self, it's just these feelings that go away basically.
It makes perfect sense. All of this history of prophets and messengers, encouraging and telling us the importance of purifying our body, purifying your senses, your body, circumcising. Why are these things so important? Why are these rules and what's the reason why we pray? What's the reason that we always remember God? Why are we fasting? Why are we doing these things? Why are we praying? Why are we always remembering? This is why. Is because you have the chance, the honor. This is also written in scripture that, like for example, where it says, leave from there, you who bear the vessels of the Lord. So we're literally, the human body is a vessel. So if you purify yourself, if you think good thoughts, if you speak good words, if you only, if you only focus on purity and only looking at good things, only remembering God, only listening to prophets and messengers' words, only listening to the words of God, you have the honor of being a vessel for a good soul. And if you choose to not purify yourself and just let go of your morals and manners completely, you can actually be a vessel for a very extremely evil soul that would have extreme pain and suffering in this world and in the hereafter.
And what are those acts of worship that you just mentioning? It is actually just the fact, you can summarize it with the word worship to God, submitting God to God, right? It's you submit to God. That's what it is. The way when you submit to God, that's when you allow that pure soul enter, right?
Exactly. So, so we learned that the I has three components. Oh, also the self. The self that we have also has two components. So there's a bad self and a good self. So every human being has both. Every human being, not every human being, a lot of human beings will, I'll mention that later. But so basically, this verse in the Quran that people think that it's about Adam and Eve, where he says that surely fear God who created you from oneself, and then his partner.
And created many men and women from it.
Exactly, and he created many men and women from that. If it was talking about Adam and Eve, it would say all
women,
because
and men
every
and
single person came from Adam and Eve, right? Yeah. So this verse, the key to understanding this verse, it's talking about the self. It's talking about how everyone has a good self and its partner, the evil self. So we have a good self that's compassionate, that's that's kind, that says good things, that does good things, that causes you to do good. And then there's the bad self that is envious and vicious and just nasty, and we all have these two. We all know this is very clear, in our everyday life, that you have these thoughts and then you have good ones and then you have bad ones.
They usually say that you have the angel and the devil on your shoulders, right? And cartoons where they whisper in your ears.
Yeah. So another, there's a story that it's in the movie, I believe, but it was actually a story of Jesus that's been a little bit corrupted over the years, but it's about these two selves, one evil, one good, and he gives the example of two wolves. There's a good wolf, a white wolf, and a black wolf, a bad wolf. So this grandfather in the movie, he's telling his grandchild, look, my son, you know, every human being, they have a bad wolf and a good wolf, and the grandchild, he asks him, so which one is going to win? You know, they are always in a constant battle with each other. Every day you wake up in the morning, you have evil suggestions and you have good suggestions. So and you go to bed and you have these, and then you wake up and it's the same thing. So the child asks, so which one is going to win? And he says, whichever one that you feed. So this is why the Tao, Jesus' teachings, Prophet Muhammad's teachings, all of the prophets and messengers, they always tell you, purify yourself, speak good words, think good things, don't hear any evil, don't speak any evil, don't look at evil, you know, don't be around evil, don't eat, only eat what's halal, you know, don't eat things that are bad for you. You know, these things, you know, they feed the good self, and then the opposite feeds the bad wolf. You know, so you have to focus on the good things in order to have only the good nafs, only the light that wins, so that you can win be a vessel for an honorable and good soul. That's the bottom line, yeah.
So we learned from this that, you know, there are two types of human beings. There are two types of people who get empowered. So we have the first empowered, the human that is empowered by a good soul, and the other, the bad self, is empowered by a bad soul. So you can obviously attract a righteous soul or attract a demon that possesses you, basically. So then I was like, he said that, so there's this self that is at peace with his Lord, and then there's this self that commands evil, right? And these selves, right, and then these selves, they do it because they earned it. They earned those souls that possess them. And then there's this interesting thing. There's other beings, right, that actually don't even have a self. Like there are people on this earth that don't actually have a self, meaning the concept of ego, that they've truly controlled it, and it doesn't exist in the way you'd probably imagine it to exist, and they have full control over it. And the examples like this is of Prophet Muhammad, from him is peace, who made his self submit to him, and therefore he doesn't really actually have one, because he dissolved in God, and dissolving in God makes the self disappear. And there's another type of beings who also don't have a self, and that is those angels who come onto earth and take in human vessels. Angels are known for not having a self. You know, they're actually known. They're quite well known in, especially in Islam, that they don't have an ego. They don't do things from their own desire. So what do we do? What have we learned? We have learned that. So there's that first group of people who have gained control over themselves, right? And they're like the prophets and messengers. So there's this second group who just command evil and have no control over the beast that is their self. And these are the people who've attracted these very unrighteous souls. And then actually you also have this third group who don't have neither a good self nor a bad self. And they're like this neutral body that doesn't actually have a soul, or it can, as time goes by, if it wishes to change and take either side, it can obtain a soul. That's befitting for that body. But as of now, it's like a neutral body. Yeah, and that basically is the summary of the return. So so it's like the return summarized and simplified for our human minds, actually. For sure, it's a way more complex topic, because the soul is a being that is not of this earth, so it's very hard for us to fathom it with our limited minds. And also now imagine the role the Hujjah has, the Imam of the time has, to explain to beings who are limited something so unlimited. So I was like, from him his piece has tried is doing like his task, which is to guide us baby step at a time towards realizing our purpose and what our vessels truly are, the reality of our vessel, and the reality of the soul is how much as we can comprehend, I guess. And the concept of the return, which has been hidden for so many, thousands of years, actually. Many prophet messengers were, they knew it wasn't the time to speak about these matters because they're very heavy. They're disturbing topics for people to realize that their reality is, it puts a lot of responsibility, on the human being. That's actually the
carries the soul.
Yeah, that's the key. Actually, I learned from our father regarding the soul, which is that the self carries a huge responsibility of trying to keep itself, controlled and focused, so it can keep its soul, or attract a soul, or make sure it's in the realm of only a righteous soul can capture it. It seems like the earth is a vast ocean, a dark ocean with many fish, and I guess you just have to make sure the fisherman that grabs you is a good person.
Yeah,
for sure.
This is why, the Quran says when they ask you about the soul, it's knowledge which mankind has been given very little, because it is like a heavy matter, and it is, so hard for us to comprehend. And this really is, this knowledge which Aba Al-Sadiq, from him his peace, has provided for us. This is really the first time that humanity has been given these insights before, and especially on this scale where it's been revealed to the whole world. For sure, this is really an amazing time, actually.
Before we mentioned this, that what the prophets and messengers, what made them such good thinkers and great philosophers was because they would take something they saw from the inside the matrix in order to explain something that's outside of the matrix, or explain something that's more spiritual and greater. And the thing is that what VR, video games, technology, these things are very recent discoveries, and before then we wouldn't understand. You see Ezekiel, for example, where he explains
the wheels.
Yeah, exactly. The wheels. Even the Book of Revelation, all of these books, all of these visions that they had of this time, this day and age, they were trying to describe like helicopters by saying that they were giant beasts with stingers, because they couldn't understand, they couldn't find ways to explain these things, that every prophet and messenger, they would speak in parables in order to make other people understand, what they're trying to explain. So these things wouldn't be able to be understood because these things have just now recently come out. That's why we're able to understand it a little bit better, these concepts that are so complicated and difficult.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And so Aba Al-Sadiq, from his piece, in this episode, he actually revealed some of the incarnations of the people that we know today. He revealed their past incarnations, right?
Yeah, he did. And he actually wanted to prove a point. So he was talking about Khusra. There's this character who was a Persian king, and he was a tyrant at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his progeny. And he revealed that Ali Khamenei, the leader of Iran, is actually incarnation. His previous incarnation was Khusra. And this is so huge because he was trying to show that the characters always keep choosing the same lifestyle.
Exactly,
so he was an evil person. Khusra was an evil person. And so Ali Khamenei, he is someone who is in a body, and he calls himself Grand Ayatollah and Supreme Leader of Iran. And he's truly evil as well.
He's a very evil
and
man.
he's attached to the land of Iran. So he came twice in this land. And he has an obsession with ruling. And he oppressed his people back in the day, and he wants to do the same today, right? So he found an avatar that was suitable for him, right?
Exactly, yeah. And he's also revealed that Vladimir Putin is actually a reincarnation of Julius Caesar. And there's a very strong physical resemblance of the two. So if you actually Google that, you can look that up and you can see this extremely strong resemblance between the two. And actually Aba Al-Sadiq, from his piece, has revealed many more incarnations of people who are, people that are famous from the past who have incarnated today, and they have a similar mission and they have a similar perspective. yeah, I think we'll leave it there today. All of this information, you know, that we've discussed about the soul, this has been revealed to us by Aba Al-Sadiq, from him is peace, the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad. And if you would like to know more, you can go to YouTube and type in "The Mehdi has appeared" to see, you know, all of his revelations, basically all of the knowledge that he's given us. We'll leave it for that tonight. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.